Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today, I'm talking about A Rage of Sabers, Kingdom of Ghosts, Book 2 by Victor Gischler. I really dig that cover. Got a little, looks like some Scarlet Witch action going on here. It's not the Scarlet Witch. Book 2, Kingdom of Ghosts. Aethon? Aethon. Aethon Books. Not sure if that's the proper pronunciation, but there you go. Little housekeeping. I don't know why I'm calling it that. Before I get into the book, first of all, my t-shirt, I'm not promoting banning books. This is from Ghoulish, and it's banning books only makes us scarier, from ghoulish.rip. Just want to clear that up. I'm not pro banning books. Secondly, I'm recording this on an off day because I read the first book in this series back in September of 2023. It is currently February of 2024. The first book, even though it's a trilogy telling just one whole story, there was a nice break point at the end of book one. And so I took the time to read a bunch of other stuff, and then I pulled this out. I was like, okay, I got enough stuff in the bag, enough reviews recorded. I'm gonna pull out a thicker book and take some time to read it. Good thing I did that, because I ended up getting sick and not reading for a few days at all. No reading at all for a few days, which is crazy. But the plan was I would finish this book, read a few different things, and then maybe next month pick up book 3 and read that, finish the trilogy. But then I read the end of book 2, and there was absolutely no way I wasn't going to immediately start book 3. So I figured I'd better record this review before I get too deep. I already started book 3, already like 60 pages in. But I wanted to record this so that I don't start mixing up what went on in book 3 with what went on in book 2. So it's a work day, going to bed soon, but I wanted to get this recorded before I start jumbling things up in my head. All right, all of that being said, for the too long didn't watch crowd, wait, before I do that, I guess I should talk a little bit about what the book's about. Well, our main character is Merrick Niles. He lives in a fantasy world called the Scattered Kingdom, because centuries ago it was known as Greymond, but the king was killed, and the land just basically broke up into different baronies and different areas. There's dukes running some and barons running some, places that aren't really run by anybody. It's the Scattered Kingdom now. But there's this threat growing in the West, I believe. Essentially communists, for lack of a. It's the Union of something. Is this going to tell me if I take a quick look at the back? No, don't see it. Anyway, it's communists, and they are sweeping across the Scattered Kingdom. And so Merrick Niles, this your basic rogue with a heart of gold, he's hired to steal a map. He kind of double crosses the people that hired him. He ends up, this is on the back of the first book. He ends up with 3 ghosts in his head. And one thing leads to another. He becomes involved in essentially politics. He's trying to just get away. But there's essentially 2 potential kings, because there's one group that thinks, let's put this king on the throne, unite the Scattered Kingdom into Greymond once again, and we can fight off the invading communists. And then there's another group that thinks, well, we'll put our king on the throne and make a deal with the communists. And sort of, they can do whatever the hell they want with everybody else as long as they let us have our little kingdoms. Um, so all of this is going on. And Merrick Niles caught in the middle of all of this. And so in this book, takes place a week or two after the events of the end of the first book, and um, it's the story escalates. We're introduced to a few new characters, and reintroduced to the characters we've met before. The um, the communists are a little bit more in the background than they were in the first book, and this one is more about the conflict between the two potential kings, one of whom is essentially fake, and one who is actually descended from the assassinated king from centuries ago. But one's pretty much a good guy, one's a bad guy. And so it's a lot of conflict there, a lot of politics. People still angry with Merrick Niles about what went on in the first book, so they're after him. And so just all sorts of stuff going on. Now, for the too long didn't watch folks, 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. The twists, the turns, the heartbreaking moments. Again, an ending that compelled me to immediately go to the third book. I'm so glad I'd already ordered it. I would have been pissed if I didn't have it sitting on my shelf and I had to wait for it to arrive. But just fantastic. I gave the first book 4 out of 5. This is 5 out of 5. I'm hoping he can stick the landing. And the third book's the biggest one of all. It's about 600 pages. So, why is it a 5 out of 5? Well, first of all, Victor Gischler, great writer, just a nice, smooth writing style. Doesn't get bogged down. It's not thick prose, but it's not too sparse. We get some descriptions, but it's not overdone. I am by no means an expert in fantasy, but when I was reading this, I was thinking about what I was going to say, and I decided that fantasy is a triangle. So you all know what a triangle looks like, something like that. One corner over here, you've got Conan the Barbarian and that ultra pulp, some might say misogynistic type of fantasy, sword and sorcery type of fantasy, with just thickly muscled men in loincloths, barely clothed women, lots of weird monsters or just other people being chopped up with broadswords. And then over here in this corner, you've got what I would call the Dungeons and Dragons type of fantasy, which I think is different than Conan the Barbarian and pulpy stuff. Dungeons and Dragons, where you'd have books like the Dragonlance series, the Dungeons and Dragons books, the Forgotten Realms books, where it's adventuring parties. And I know they've built bigger worlds and they've gone beyond that. The few books that I have, might only have 2 at the moment, are actually I'm going to have to review them sometime. I don't think I've reviewed them. I'll have to actually go back and look. I can't remember. But they're essentially, maybe I have. I think of them as like Sherlock Holmes in the Dungeons and Dragons world. Love it. Just the character's a detective, a Sherlock Holmes type, but it's in the Dungeons and Dragons world. It's great. So that's the other corner. And then, of course, the top corner is Lord of the Rings. These huge epic fantasies with incredible world building. So if that's our triangle, I would put this, so far, the first 2 books anyway, right in the center of that triangle. It's not super pulpy, misogynistic. Again, point of view, um, just bare-chested barbarians swinging swords. It's not adventure parties going out and looking for treasure and doing this and that, fighting dragons and everything. And it's not the deep, epic, incredible world building of J.R.R. Tolkien and his kin, his type. I didn't mean kin literally. It fits in the middle. It's a relatively realistic medieval type world, I suppose, with, there's knights, swords, crossbows, that sort of thing, but there is magic. And there have been a few mythical, for lack of a better term, creatures. Haven't been any dragons. There aren't there have been no elves or hobbits or anything. I believe, for the most part, everybody we've seen has been basically a human, not just humanoid. No trolls or goblins, any of that. But again, there is magic here. We have seen some odd creatures, and he has built the scattered kingdom and the opposing factions and everything. And I think he's done a very good job. But his biggest strength, and the reason I love these books so much right now, is his characters. Merrick Niles might seem a little tropey, being a rogue with a heart of gold. Starts off, he's just out for himself, but he stumbles into doing the right thing. And we've seen that before. My nephew and I, our shorthand for these books is the Moon Knight. Oh, the Moon Knight books. Because of, for those of you not familiar with the comic book character Moon Knight, he's a superhero with 3 different personalities. Some might say 4. There's so much. I'm not going to get into all of the Moon Knight, but because Merrick Niles has these 3 ghosts in his head, it's when the first book showed up on Amazon, and my nephew and I both read the synopsis. We're like, oh, it's Moon Knight, fantasy Moon Knight. And that has probably been done before, that sort of thing, but I really like the character, and I like the characters around him. Even the bad characters are written well, are interesting, and old Victor Gischler got me, just like a few others relatively recently, where I'm like, well, maybe this bad guy isn't so bad. Maybe they're sort of a Doctor Doomish type of character. Nope, they're bad. They're evil. They're a horrible, horrible, bad character, but interestingly written. And there are definitely some shocks in this story. I'm not going to talk about what they are. Of course, I don't want to spoil anything, but 2 things happened that were very shocking to me. But it's the characters are well drawn, the chemistry between the characters, and there are a lot of characters in here, and so there's a point where something happens with Merrick Niles. We're left with sort of a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter, and then it's 4 or 5 chapters before we get back to him, which builds that tension. But it's also, I'm interested in what's going on with all the other characters. There was definitely one. I feel like there were at least another one, a character that sort of disappeared. And there's a point where I'm reading about everything that's going on and all the different characters, and I thought, well, what happened to so and so? And then it wasn't long after that another character in the book was like, what happened to so and so? Oh, this is what happened, and then that character will show up again. So I don't think he's left any dangling characters like that where they just disappear completely, at least out of our large core group of characters. There's great character development. One of the characters in the first book starts out. There's an old woman who is an archbishop in the church, and I don't think anybody's going to see where she's ended up in book 2. And I can't wait to see where she goes in book 3. But her story, and she's not even the main character. Her story is fantastic. And again, the intertwining of the people, the relationships, I love all of it. Again, I'm no expert. Some people might read this and say it's full of tropes. I don't think that it is. There may be one or two, depending on how you're looking at things. But for me, this book, even better than the first one. And I like this character, who's not the Scarlet Witch. Here's old Merrick Niles. And that's Rugger. That's Rugger right there. I just really, really happy with this book. Unfortunately, it came out 2022, so it's not going to be on my best of 2024 list, unless I do one for, I'll do one for like top 10 books that came out in 2024, and then do another one that's like top 10 books I read in 2024. This would easily make that list. Absolutely loved it. So I think I covered everything I need to cover. I covered the basic elements of the story. It's still two people vying to be king, and the political machinations, the battles that are being fought, while the communists are building their forces and plotting their takeover of the scattered kingdom. Merrick Niles caught in the middle of all this, other characters caught in the middle, splitting up, coming back together. Happy moments, tragic moments, just wonderful characters. Highly recommend this. But this is a true single story. You have to, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want. But basically, if you want the story, you got to read the first book, then the second book, and then the third book, which 60 pages in, fantastic. We'll see what happens. And I've managed to avoid saying anything at all about what goes on in those 60 pages. So there you have it. A Rage of Sabers, Kingdom of Ghosts Book 2 by Victor Gischler. 5 out of 5 stars. As soon as I'm done recording this video, I'm going to dive into reading book 3 until it's time for me to go to bed, because I have to go to work in the morning. So I didn't really think ahead. Do I ever? For a question for this video. So yeah, no question for this video. Feel free to ask me anything. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. If you're on Blue Sky, I am @EL Smith. That's all I have for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.